This is Matt for Into Boxing. Delighted for the first time to be joined by Dan Rafael. Dan, we're here in Las Vegas for Canelo Fight Week. It's always a big show when Canelo comes to town. You just had the pleasure of speaking to Dimitri Bivol. How was he? Is he in good spirits, ready to go?
Dimitri is as poised and as calm and as just within himself as you'll find any boxer at this time prior to a fight. He is very relaxed. If you didn't know he was getting ready for a, not just any old fight, but, a huge, important, significant, lucrative, just gigantic event for him. He looks like he just, rolled out of bed and is like just ready to go about his day, get some coffee, have some breakfast, maybe go to the store, go to the park. I mean, he's just a very laid back, really reserved kind of guy. He's a real pleasure to deal with. I mean, his English has improved dramatically over the years, and I have to say that was as good of an interview as that. I sat with a few of the other reporters, and he was tremendous. He really was. He's excited for the fight, but he doesn't give off that super vibe of like excitement. You know what I mean? He's more of a chill kind of guy, but you can tell like this is the moment for him. He knows it.
Do you think people are underestimating Dimitri Bivol's chances because they maybe saw his performance against Craig Richards, and maybe a lot of people are saying he sort of performs to different levels depending on who he's fighting? Do you think people are completely overlooking him in this fight?
I wouldn't say completely overlooking him, but I do think that he's not getting as much credit for his accomplishments and his ability as maybe he deserves. You made the point when you just made the comment that sometimes he fights down to the level of his opposition. We all know he's a much better fighter than a Salamov or Craig Richards. I mean, not that they're bad fighters or anything, but it's just a different level. Those guys came and tried, but Dimitri seemed content to just know he can be better than them, win the fight. He's gonna have to raise his intensity more against a fighter like a Canelo Alvarez, but he has shown he can do that when he fought against like a Sullivan Barrera, when he fought against a guy like a Joe Smith. He's able to find the extra gear against those types of opponents, knowing that they're more dangerous than some of the other opponents he has faced. So I feel like Canelo, he knows what his background is. He knows how good he is. He respects Canelo, it seems to me, a lot. And, he's going to probably fight much better against him than he did against fighters that aren't at that, recognition level.
Now, his opponent, Canelo Alvarez, seems to take on every challenge. He seems to be the most active superstar in the sport. The great run he had through the back end of the pandemic, when you talk about Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, and obviously had the Ildrim, and he just keeps racking up these big names. Where would a winner for Dimitri Bivol rank in his list of accomplishments and a career that's still far from done? I
think that Bivol, when it's all said and done, from that point, it remains to be seen what kinds of fights he'll have in the future. But, other than, say, the very controversial victory that he had in the second fight against Triple G, I think Bivol might rank as one of his best fights, at least since he's been middleweight and above. I mean, he had some really good wins before that, like when he defeated, like an Arislani Lara, for example, or even like a Miguel Cotto as a middleweight. But in the post-middleweight days, among the activity he's had over the last couple of years as a super middleweight, and even when he fought Kovalev at light heavyweight, I think I might have to rank Bivol at the top of the list. I think he's a better fighter than Caleb Plant. I think he's a better fighter than Billy Joe Saunders. I think he's certainly a lot fresher than Kovalev was. Kovalev at his best was maybe a little better, but that was not the version of Kovalev that he faced. Better than a Callum Smith, who was obviously very good. I mean, I think Bivol is his best opponent since he's come to 168.
That's some acknowledgement considering the names we just mentioned. I don't want to seem like we're looking past this opponent for Canelo because he's a world.
We can look past him because we're not fighting.
We can, but it's not done in any disrespect because there's a serious fight happening Saturday. But when you look at his limitations or the ceiling of what Canelo can do, there's talks of him going to cruiserweight and pushing these boundaries. What do you see in his future? Would you like to see him maybe test that boundary and go against the likes of Makabu or calculated risk maybe and see if he can mix it in with the higher weight?
Well, if he wins the fight on Saturday, he's already contracted for the Triple G fight.
Yeah, that's correct.
So that would take place back at 168 in the fall. Now, after that, it's pretty much an open schedule. There's no specific opponent that he would have to face. I don't think the organizations are going to give him a hard time in terms of mandatories at the moment because he just has won the undisputed in the last, all the 4 belts in the super middleweight division. It wouldn't even have been really a full year yet until he had them, so he's not going to be, and even if they saddled him with a mandatory, he can just tell them to go take a hike because he's already been undisputed. He doesn't need their belt. So I think he'll look, he'll talk to Eddie Hearn, who, even though their deal is not, it's a 2-fight deal, so he can talk to him. And maybe there'll be another push from PBC about a possible fight with Benavidez, perhaps a fight with Charlo. Maybe he will want to try to go for the cruiserweight title. I've always thought that the aspect of going for the cruiserweight title was very interesting and I say that because Canelo has often, on a regular basis, and I've covered his entire career since he's become like a known fighter, he's always talked about wanting to be in fights that were legacy kind of fights, historical kind of fights, significant fights, things that interested him. And, maybe the cruiserweight champions are not the most well-known guys, but, it's not easy to win titles in multiple weight classes. He has done it at 154, at 160, at 168. He's going to try for a second one here at 175 rather. And so if he could go up and be a cruiserweight and win a title in yet another weight class, a 5th weight class, I think that's a historical thing. And I wouldn't blame him if he wanted to do that. Personally, I'm very interested if he wanted to do that. I don't think Makabu is like, some kind of boogeyman pound for pound guy, but he's a hard-hitting southpaw who's a 200-pound guy who has pretty good punching power and is not a bad fighter. That to me would be meaningful. And, that's when you win titles in another weight class, when they write your Hall of Fame biography or they write your, many years from now, your obituary, whatever, it's going to say, former 5-division champion or former 4-division champion. That's a big deal to go up and win another title. So, but the beautiful part about being Canelo, if he wins, is all of them are possible. He can look and talk to whoever he wants and make the thing that makes him most excited and the best deal that he can get in terms of the money and just the interest to him. So, there's a lot of possibilities.
I have to say I agree with you. The cruiserweight aspect for me makes it very interesting. Just see how he deals with the weight and the step up. But we'll see. I want to talk to you about last week. Now, you've covered boxing for probably longer than I've been around. So talk to me about Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano. Not just a great fight for women's boxing, but a great fight for boxing. A proper fight. 2 unbelievable athletes. Talk to me about last week in New York. It was a special night, wasn't it?
It really was a terrific fight. I mean, when that fight was taking place, I was here in Las Vegas covering the Shakur Stevenson Oscar Valdez fight. So I was in the MGM Grand Garden Arena and downstairs in the building we're standing in right now. Fortunately, the way that the show went in terms of the pacing, there was a little bit of a lull in between some fights, and when the first fight of the night was a first-round knockout, so there was time until the second fight. Bottom line was I had my laptop open to DAZN, sitting there in the press area, and myself and 3 or 4 of the other guys and gals that were there covering the fight, we just gathered around my laptop and watched Katie and Amanda do their thing. And it was, like you said, it's not just a great women's fight, which has always been the tag because this whole promotion was about the biggest women's fight, the best women, blah, blah, blah. It was just a great fight. It doesn't matter if they're female or if they're male. They put on a great show. They proved themselves at the upper pinnacle of the sport in terms of entertainment value and the heart that they showed, the skills that they showed. They had already had a ton of accomplishment before they fought each other. Katie's been undisputed for quite a while. She's also won a title in 140 pounds. Mm-hmm. Amanda has won titles in 7 different weight classes. A few years ago, the Hall of Fame added a ballot for the women's side of boxing. I have no doubt in my mind that even prior to their fight, that both Amanda and Katie were destined to be in the International Boxing Hall of Fame. After that kind of fight and that kind of legendary sort of atmosphere and event, they're definitely going to the Hall of Fame at this point. And they're not done because there's a good possibility that they'll have a second fight later this year, as everybody afterwards spoke about. And as Eddie Hearn said, even before they fought the first fight, he could see it being good enough where there might be a trilogy. So, I have massive respect for what those 2 women did on last Saturday. They put on as good a show as you can get. And to have it happen in a famed arena like Madison Square Garden, which is one of the great traditional arenas in any sport in this country, in the world. I've covered so many fights there. It was a great thing. I said to people also, so many of the other stars of women's boxing were present, as well as from the past, like the Trailblazers, the Layla Ali and Christy Martin. They had Cecilia Brækhus there, and many of the other current champions, whether it was Clarissa Shields or Jessa McCaskill or Michaela Mayer, Alicia Baumgartner. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody, but it was a real tribute to what women's boxing can be. It's come such a long way. When I first started writing about boxing, over 20 years ago, there was the oddball fight that might be of interest. There was the occasional women's TV fight. Maybe they might stick a women's fight on an undercard. Christy Martin was kind of a big deal. Layla was doing her thing. Lucia Riker was still active. But it was really few and far between that you had a women's fight that people really cared about. I get the feeling now that there are fights in women's boxing that people care about, whether they're men fans or female fans, and that was one of those fights. People care, they're interested in. Like now, I hear people talk about wanting to see the Claressa Savannah Marshall fight, for example. They want to see Michaela Mayer further unify the weight classes or the division at 130 pounds. So there is more of an interest among diehard fans, both for the men's side of the sport and the women.
100%. I think the last 12 months have just been unbelievable for the women's side of the sport, and long may it continue. Some great fights coming up. Finally, just from me, I think the news broke last night. I saw it on Twitter. I think the source was yourself about Anthony Joshua, and looking like he's going to remain on Sky Sports pay-per-view. First off, what's your thoughts on that? And did it come as a surprise, or did you think he was going to go with DAZN? What's your initial thoughts?
Well, I did report that yesterday. It's not a done deal. I believe I wrote that he was poised to finalize the deal with them. It doesn't surprise me. Not that Anthony and I are best friends or anything like that, but I know him a bit. I've interviewed him many times. I've covered his career, and I know the people that he's been with, and he is a creature of habit. I said one of the reasons why it's been hard for him to make the trainer change, that he kind of had to find that happy medium, and as opposed to going with a brand new trainer, he decided, he sort of split the baby and decided to go with somebody else that's been in his camp, that he's been familiar with, that he's worked with for the last few fights. So it is a change, but it's not like a complete overhaul. He's been with the same broadcaster, Sky Sports, for his entire career. He's been with Eddie Hearn for his entire career. He's been with Freddie Cunningham as his manager for his entire career. In other words, a guy that gets to that level hasn't made changes. He's a creature of habit, and if you've had success and things have been so good in terms of the relationship between him and Sky for so long, they've been beneficial for each other, it doesn't surprise me that he's going to stay. Now obviously Eddie, it makes it for a little bit of a complicated relationship, let's say, because Eddie is no longer, Matchroom's events are all moved to DAZN in the UK. The one fighter that was not part of that was Anthony, but it's Anthony's doing what's best for his career, not what's best for Matchroom, as much respect as he has for Matchroom. So for him to decide to stay on Sky, which is a household product in the UK, is not in any way a surprise to me. Now, that's not to say that come his rights in the United States, he may very well still be on DAZN. But in Britain, it feels like they're going to finalize the deal for him to remain on Sky.
The rematch between him and Alexander Usyk, what's your opinion from the outside looking in? What do you think happens in that rematch? Has he had enough time working with this trainer? Do you think the trainer will make a lot of difference? What does he need to do to reverse that such a decisive victory from Usyk?
He's going to just need to not fight the kind of fight he fought in the first fight. I thought he fought the totally wrong fight, and I'm not a trainer, but it was very clear to me that if you're the bigger, stronger, more powerful guy, you got 65,000 people behind you, you don't stay on the ropes and try to box the consummate pound-for-pound boxer. You go and you try to impose yourself on the guy. He didn't do that, and it just was a terrible game plan in my mind, and hopefully they can make some adjustments for his sake and find a different result. But it's going to take a lot. It's not like the Andy Ruiz fight. In the Andy Ruiz fight, he got caught. That happens. He didn't get caught in the Usyk fight. He got outclassed in the Usyk fight. It's a different story, different things he's got to fix. There wasn't a lot to fix against Ruiz. He just had to, be more focused, maybe pay more attention to a few different things. Usyk's a much more complicated guy. And also Andy certainly helped him out by coming in, not being in any kind of mental or physical shape for that fight. Alexander Usyk is not like that. He is prepared for his fights mentally and physically at all times.
Dan Rafael, thanks for talking to Into Boxing and giving me some of your time for the first time. And fingers crossed we might catch up later on in the week.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you
very much.
You got it.